Good morning, First Unitarian. Our service today is going to be in honor of the fact that tomorrow is Labor Day. So we're going to be kind of holding up the work of the world and labor and what it means to work and things like that. And our call to worship today is from Thich Nhat Hanh. He wrote, "Every morning when we wake up, we have 24 brand new hours to live. What a precious gift. We have the capacity to live in a way that these 24 hours will bring peace, joy, and happiness to ourselves and others. Peace is present right here and now in ourselves and in everything we do and see. We don't have to travel far away to enjoy the blue sky. We don't have to leave our city or even our neighborhood to enjoy the eyes of a beautiful child. Even the air we breathe can be a source of joy. We can smile, breathe, talk, and eat our meals in a way that allows us to be in touch with the abundance of happiness that is available. We're very good at preparing to live, not so good at living. We know how to sacrifice 10 years for a diploma, and we're willing to work very hard to get a job, a house, a car, and so on, but we have difficulty remembering that we are alive in the present moment, the only moment there is for us to be alive. Every breath we take, every step we make can be filled with peace, joy, and serenity. We need only be awake, alive in the present moment. Welcome to worship this morning.
That was awesome. Has anybody ever asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up? I was asked that by some loving adults in my life, at school or at family gatherings, and I knew what they wanted. They were waiting for me to tell them a job or an occupation. It was a way for them to try and learn about what I liked or what I imagined. And it was about the work I would do when I was older, which always felt sort of weird. I guess I could have asked them the same question to see if they were doing as an adult what they thought they were going to do when they were a kid. And I do wish that I had asked them that question. My answer usually was that I wanted to be the first female president of the United States or a ballerina. I was flexible. And then an adult would maybe ask a follow-up question and then start talking to another adult. And I'd be safe from answering that question again for a while. No one ever asks you, where do you want to be when you grow up? Or how many hours would you like to work when you grow up? Or what sort of worker protections would you like to see in your workplace when you grow up? And really, a long time ago, this question was worded pretty differently. It didn't always contain the when you grow up piece. 121 years ago, kids worked. And it was often dangerous, repetitive work that lasted far longer than any adult today typically works. See, kids were tiny, and they could squeeze into places in factories and coal mines that adults couldn't reach. Kids worked long hours, and they were paid very little and could get really hurt or even killed by the types of work that they did. The kids who went to school usually came from families that had plenty of money to pay their bills, but other families had to have everyone working in order to have a place to live and food to eat. So I wonder if anyone ever asked those kids in the factories, in the mines, what they wanted to be when they grew up. Over the years, a lot of children and adults have spoken up about the work that they do to improve conditions for themselves and for others. And kids go to school now, and if a kid wants to work, they have to get a waiver to do so, and their employer has to follow a lot of rules to keep the kids safe. In our country, there are all kinds of rules now that exist today about who can work and how much and what the workplace should be like to keep the workers safe. And these rules exist because workers united together to stand up and speak out and demand better working conditions. Labor Day, which happens on Monday, is a national holiday to honor all those folks who work hard in our communities and the work that generations of laborers have done to land us today in a place where kids get asked, what do they want to be when they grow up? And that's worth remembering and celebrating. Yeah? Yeah. One time, a little boy in England was asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he replied, happy. The teachers told him that he didn't understand the assignment, and he told them that they didn't understand life. That little boy grew up to be a musician and a singer named John Lennon, who was in a famous rock group called the Beatles. And I really like his answer. I'm not the president yet, or a ballerina. But I am an educator and a teacher, and that work for me is fun and fantastic. I would never have answered that when I was younger. I like that the kids and the youth that I teach and work with don't have to wiggle far back into a factory or a mine, but I know that there are other kids in our world who are still working instead of going to school and who are still facing dangerous conditions. And even schools here in the United States can be scary places sometimes. I'm still growing up. I want to be happy and safe and loved, and I want that for you too, and for everyone around the world. Let's remember on this Labor Day that we can unite our hearts and our hands together to build the world where we can be able to embrace possibilities in work and life, in safety and in happy ways. So, what do you want to be when you grow up? Have a great week. Brian's on his way.
Wearing many hats today. Thank you for your patience. It's now the time that we think about the gratefulness that we have for this place, this community, this music, these speakers, and everything that this community gives to us and everything that we can give back to our larger community. For those of you here, there will be a basket at the back as you leave, and I encourage you to give to the mission and the values of this community. For those of you joining us via Zoom, I encourage you to go to our website and or go to your Breeze login and use the drop-down menu to give to our congregation. Thank you so much again for being here.
So I don't know about you, but having a stand-up bass in the house just makes me happy. Right? and of course, someone that knows how to play it. Yes. A few joys and concerns of our larger community I'd like to hold up at this time. I want to hold up and send prayers of healing and courage to Amelia Dorn's mother. Amelia's mother is Donna Van Hook, and after a long period of remission, her breast cancer has returned, so she's been spending the last week in and out of biopsies and preparing for oncology treatment. So strength and courage and healing to Donna Van Hook and her lifetime partner, Karen King. I want to hold up all the people who are affected and suffering from the effects of climate change in this country and beyond. We have hurricanes in the south and flooding in the east. We have fires in the west and droughts in the southwest. We have climate refugees increasing all over the planet. What is it going to take for our decision makers to take this seriously? And I want to hold up and call out the Texas legislature. Well, actually, I want to hold up women and people who would like to vote in Texas, and I'd like to call out the Texas legislature. In the past week, two things have occurred from the Texas legislature. One is vast and binding and, in my personal opinion, horrific restrictions on the rights of women on what they can do with their own bodies. And in this last week, Texas has opened the door to open carry of weapons. No licensing required, no training, nothing whatsoever. Anybody who would like to can just put a weapon of destruction upon their hip and go out in public and do whatever they wish, as if that's going to solve anything for anybody. I want to hold up again, as we have the last couple of weeks, I want to hold up and send prayers of strength and clarity and comfort to the women of Afghanistan as their country returns to a state in which those poor human beings have hardly any rights to be in public or to be educated or to hold a job or to decide who they might wish to marry. And lastly, I want to mention with some appreciation the Colorado attorney, Phil Weiser, for insisting that there be an investigation into the death of Elijah McClain 2 years ago. You might remember Elijah McClain was a young black man who was walking home. He was not accused of any crime whatsoever. He was simply detained by 3 Aurora police officers who held him down and bound his hands and knelt on his neck and his back until a couple of paramedics showed up and injected him with enough ketamine to stop his heart. Elijah McClain died that night, 3 days later. And this past week, there were indictments for those officers and their, in my humble opinion, obvious maltreatment, criminal maltreatment of Elijah McClain, who should be with us alive and well. So our prayer today are some words by the great Lebanese poet and philosopher Khalil Gibran, and they are on the subject of our topic today, which is Labor Day and work. Khalil Gibran: Then a plowman asked, "Speak to us of work." And he answered, saying, "You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's procession, that marches in majesty and proud submission toward the infinite. When you work, you are a flute, through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. Which of you would be a reed dumb and silent while all else sings together in unison? Always you've been told that work is a curse and labor a misfortune, but I say to you that when you work, you fulfill a part of earth's furthest dream, assigned to you when the dream was born. And in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's inmost secret. And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with a breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching. Amen. Well, guys, not every day I get to welcome Duke Ellington into the house. Thank you, all of our musicians today. I want to begin this reflection with a poem by Mary Oliver called The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who's eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know what a prayer is. I know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down into the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So many years ago, I spent a few months doing factory work in Chicago. My job was to insert an electrical cord into a box that housed a small electric motor and solder 3 wires to their respective terminals. That's it. That was my job. Every day, all day, the boxes with the motor inside and the electric cord with 3 wires on the ends would come to me on carts to my left, and I would put them together and solder the wires and stack the assembly onto another cart on my right, and when it was full, it would be taken away. We got 10 minutes each hour to rest our hands and our eyes, not 12, not 11, 10 minutes. The pay was $5 an hour, which was $1.68 more than the minimum wage at the time. Occasionally, I'd be given other tasks to do, like glue pieces of cardboard together or assemble little magnets into the little motors or sweeping the floor, but most of the time, parts from the left, solder the wires, stack them on the right, over and over and over and over. And I learned something I did not expect to learn. Something I actually consider priceless, which is that the nuances of soldering wires to terminals is infinite. Almost unbelievably so. The fine details of how you hold a soldering iron or how you twist the wires, from how much solder you apply to how carefully you ensure that each connection is firmly attached and clean before you move it along the line, from the speed with which you solder to the ways you can precisely control the heat and colors of the molten solder by gently blowing on it in the process, from the pressure you apply to the angle of the wires on the terminal, even how you breathe and how you time your breathing with your motions makes a difference. Endless variety, endless creativity, even in the most mundane task. I learned that you can, if you try, you can teach your left and your right hands to perfectly do entirely disparate tasks, even while your mind is completely elsewhere, aware to the second of how long until your next break, all the while pondering if there's a different stacking arrangement that would allow the cart to carry more completed units, rethinking a conversation you had yesterday and how much of Buddhism is based on a real person versus how much is just legend. All at the same time. There were times at the factory I would enter a state I didn't have the word for it then, but now I could only describe as Zen. Aware of my body and my task and all the minute details of the task, aware of my surroundings, completely focused and simultaneously completely detached, just watching it from outside somehow. Quite enjoyable, actually, to be sunken into the present moment, relaxed, busy, aware, at peace. And when I would talk to my fellow workers about this, about slipping into this state of kind of Zen awareness and creativity, every single one of them knew exactly what I was talking about. That gave me a whole new understanding that kind of work and how people can do that stuff for years on end. And I think that's what Mary Oliver's getting at when she says, I don't know what a prayer is. I know how to pay attention. Thich Nhat Hanh's classic book, The Miracle of Mindfulness, is all about exactly this that I'm talking about. He talks about in his early days as a monk in a monastery having to do the dishes for over 100 monks every day, and how the task became not only easier but actually enjoyable to the degree that he stopped doing the dishes in order to have clean dishes and just stayed in the moment washing the dishes only to be washing the dishes. Aware of his breath, aware of the water, aware of the surfaces, aware of the sensations and the sounds. He writes that if you're only thinking about what you're going to do after you do the dishes, you're only partially alive while you're doing the dishes. And it's likely you won't be very present for whatever you're going to do afterwards either, because your mind and attention will then be on to something else instead of there. So I'll tell you, this is not really a confession, just sort of an observation. I suck at sitting meditation. I have no ability or capacity for it whatsoever. I've tried it hundreds of times. I've taken classes. I've read books. I've joined groups. I've done more. I admire people who can just sit and be fully present as a human merely being. But I've done it enough now, and I'm old enough now, I'm comfortable saying that just sitting just doesn't work for me. I am way better at human merely being when I'm also a human doing something, anything, shoveling dirt, grooming my dog, sawing wood, walking, preparing food, even doing the dishes or folding laundry. Present better opportunities for me, at least, to be fully present, aware of the moment, aware of my body, aware of time, aware of my thoughts, achieving, however briefly, a meditative state. You might know there's a whole canon of work in Catholic theology about the spirituality of work, starting with the proposition that God is present in everything. Everything, every molecule, every process, every aspect of creation, and so that the work we do, the things we touch, the relationships we form, the love we give, receive, neglect, or reject, all of these things, everything we do really is an interaction with the holy. The inherent sacredness of the cosmos. Catholics didn't invent this idea, of course. And I think it's worth noting, briefly, That despite the justified bad reputation that work has acquired in the 21st century, largely from interchangeable mechanistic jobs like the one I had in that factory and the way they treat workers in factories like that, despite all that, right, we were born to work. Born to hunt and gather and plow fields and carry water and raise children and make tools and make music and make communities. Form relationships. Working is our natural state in ways both literal and just in our heads. When Mary Oliver asks, "Who made the world?" I can't help but think, like we did. Right? Not the black bear and the swan and the grasshopper, of course, but this so-called civilized world we have created. We kind of broke it. And we can kind of fix it. I think that's the work of the world. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. One aspect of work that I think isn't spoken of nearly enough is the way in which, when we work to shape something in the world, whatever it is, a thing, a relationship, a community, an organization, that work that we are putting out there to the world to shape something simultaneously shapes us. In one of Annie Dillard's books, she writes of an individual who has chosen the difficult work of teaching a stone to talk. And I'm going to quote her here. "Reports differ on precisely what he wants or expects the stone to say. I don't think he expects the stone to speak as we do and describe for us its long life or many and few sensations. I think instead he's trying to teach it to say a single word, like cup or uncle. And for this purpose he has not, as some have suggested, carved the stone a little mouth or furnished it in any way with a pocket of air which it might expel. No one knows what goes on at these teaching sessions, least of all myself. I assume that like any other meaningful effort, the ritual involves sacrifice, the suppression of self-consciousness, and a certain precise tilt of the will, so that the will becomes transparent and hollow, a channel for the work." And I've shared that passage just because I love that precise language at the end of it. A certain precise tilt of the will, so that the will becomes transparent and hollow, a channel for the work. So a channel, especially like if it's on the ocean, right? If channels flow both ways. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. There's a stillness at the transition periods and a mingling of the waters. That's exactly what makes work. The work we do. I'm not just talking about what we do for a living, right? I'm talking about the work of our lives. That's exactly what makes the work we do a profound impact, act of the soul. Applying ourselves to working at something in the world, whatever it is, automatically the world also applies its work to us. We shape each other. Working is a channel. The information, the energy flows back and forth, always bidirectional, always mutually affecting. This is why almost everything you and I have ever learned, and why almost everything we are, has been shaped by the work we do or have done. Not just the dishes, the laundry, whatever we've done in exchange for a paycheck, but everything we've ever done. Raising children, planting a garden, painting a wall or a portrait, making music, making our relationships work, putting a Band-Aid on a child, writing a letter, on and on. All of it, everything you've ever chosen to do has shaped you. I think it's worth considering deeply on this weekend set aside to celebrate work and workers, that the work we do matters, like all of it. And I'm going to close with this thought. It is so clear at this point in time that the work of the world right now simply must be about healing our broken covenant with the earth that sustains us. Amen? There's no higher priority, because without that, there will be no other priority except brutish survival. And on that note, I want to again hold up the thinking of Jem Bendel, who's a British environmental philosopher. And he outlines 4 principles of how to live and work in these times. And the 4 principles are resilience, relinquishment, restoration, and reconciliation. Resilience is about intentionally cultivating the kinds of capacities that will serve us moving forward into this world. Capacities like love and generosity, sharing resources, building community, alternative economies, and even like the basic survival skills of like being able to fix stuff, being able to grow food, knowing how to purify water, and so on and so on. Cultivating these capacities, not just as individuals, but as whole communities. Resilience. The second is relinquishment, the opposite of cultivating. Letting go of the capacities, the attitudes, and the behaviors that may have served us in the past, but do not serve us in any way any longer. Like on a concrete level, building cities along coastlines and floodplains, on hillsides that are made of mud, houses with thousands of square feet, products made by child or slave labor, taking trips, buying vehicles, even pumpkin spice lattes that are unnecessary. Letting go of having access to foods from halfway across the planet or that are out of season locally on a deeper level. Relinquishing this cultural assumption, and we've all got it, we all participate in it in some way or another, this cultural assumption that we are the epitome, the center of the universe. Relinquishment. Just let that crap go. Third is restoration. Rediscovering attitudes and approaches to our lives that have been largely or wholly left by the wayside in our fossil fuel saturated, growth-based society. What would it be like to, wake with the sun and go to sleep when it sets? What would it be like to move away from a linear economy of take and use, win or lose, to a more circular economy that values reducing, reusing, recycling everything it is possible to reduce, reuse, or recycle, restoring our relationship to the earth and its natural seasons and cycles? And fourth, probably the most spiritual of the 4 principles, is reconciliation. Reconciliation is an invitation to make peace within ourselves and with each other, in our personal lives and in our cultural circumstances. The work of reconciliation is the work of taking healing seriously, of binding up what is broken, which is actually the definition of religion, right? Religion, the binding up of what has been broken. Healing ourselves, our own wounds, healing our relationships, healing systemic racism, healing the violence of poverty, calling on whatever divine sources are out there or within us to assist in this great work. Reconciliation as a guiding principle is essential because without it, we risk tearing each other apart when the going gets tough. We need that skill. And I'm going to say that, I'm going to list those again because I just think they give a powerful framework to the work of the world that all of us are called to right now. Resilience, relinquishment, restoration, reconciliation. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Let us be about this work. Amen.
Would you please join me in speaking our closing affirmation? Behind all our differences and beneath our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one, binds us forever together, throughout all time, through life and death, and the space between the stars. I'm now going to be doing the closing affirmation as ASL, which was taught to me by Tanya Chidduck, one of our members. I invite you to join me as you feel comfortable.
Our benediction is by Marge Piercy, brilliant American poet. This one's called To Be of Use. The people I love the best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element. The black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. Amen.
felt like going on a little bit longer at the end.
I live down.